Hi guys, I am super excited about this video today because it is going to be the second in my color theory for makeup series here on my channel. The first one I did was about concealer, so it was color theory for concealer and correcting and blemishes and under eyes and stuff like that. I'm going to link that one and two other related videos down below if you guys want to check that out. This video is going to be color theory for foundation. Now, the color theory for concealer video is kind of like my intro to this series, so if you're curious as to what I'm doing with this whole thing, definitely check that one out as it will make a lot more sense after that. But I'm really excited about this topic because color theory helps so much when it comes to foundation. So let's get started. Basically, as far as color theory goes, you remember the color wheel. I'm sure you've all seen it before. I talked about it in my last video too. And there's a lot of complicated information having to do with the color wheel and how it works and the relationship between all the colors and everything like that. But because we're only applying this to foundation today, I'm just going to tell you what you need to know in order to pick out your foundation shade and figure out how to work with your skin tones and undertones and things like that. For foundation, all you really need to understand is 1, complementary colors, and 2, color temperature. So complementary colors are found on the color wheel and they are going to be across from each other. So red has a complementary color, which is green. The color wheel has 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and then they have secondary colors and tertiary colors, but basically just to kind of give you a general idea, all of the primary colors are going to have a secondary color as its opposite or as its complementary color. Complementary colors are extremely important because when you're working with your skin, you've got different colors and shades and blemishes and problem areas in your skin, and when you want to cover those up or cancel those out or work with those, you need to find the proper complementary color that's going to do that for you. I'll get into that more in just a second, but I want to mention also, like I said, color temperature. This is going to be warm versus cool tones. This comes in handy when you're picking out your foundation shade, your concealer shade, trying to match it to your skin, and things like that. So keep those two general ideas of color theory in your mind as we're talking about all of these topics and kind of pieces of how color theory works into foundation, and I think it'll make a lot more sense. So basically, when we are talking about the complexion, there are 2 general kind of categories that complexion products can fall into, and I'm mostly talking about concealers, foundations, CC creams, things of that nature, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. And the 2 categories are correcting and coverage. So correcting products are going to be any product that you use to kind of correct your skinner tones. So correcting products are going to be anything that you're using to correct your skin tones, your undertones, any irregularities in your skin tone. For example, if you have a lot of redness, like just underneath your skin, just a lot of redness showing through, you're going to want to use a correcting product for that. The other category is coverage, like I said, and that's basically going to be all of the products that you use that match your skin tone exactly. So it's going to be your foundation, your blemish concealer. That's about it. So for your correcting products, these can include things like CC creams. Certain CC creams are color correcting, also color correcting primers and color correcting concealers. Now you're going to pick out these specifically based on your skin tone issues that you want to address. Like I said, if you have a lot of redness, you might go for a green because green is across from red on the color wheel. You might go for a green primer or a green toned CC cream. Yellow works too. I don't know why, it doesn't make much sense. Yellow's not across from red, but it's close to green, but it works. Yellow cancels out red also. So you're gonna wanna find a correcting product in one of those shades to correct that redness. If you've got some like under eye circles like I've talked about in previous videos, you're gonna wanna take the opposite color of that and find that in a correcting concealer. For redness specifically, Stila has a really good product that I never would have known existed had my friend not been playing around with it one day, and it's called their, let me see, let me pull it up. I pulled it up because I wanted to tell you. It's called their CC Color Correcting Cream Broad Spectrum SPF 20, and it is a CC cream, but it's more of the type of CC cream that's meant to go underneath your foundation. So this doesn't give you like a ton of coverage, but what it does is it is green based, so it's going to cancel out that redness, and I've used it on clients and it does an amazing job of doing that. And then you can go in with whatever foundation you want and it's just gonna look beautiful and perfectly even. It's awesome. This is not something that I ever would have bought otherwise, just because I would have seen it and been like, yeah, I don't need a CC cream, but it's amazing for correcting redness. Some of the color correcting primers that you'll see like at Sephora and at the store, I feel like they're a little bit gimmicky. They don't have a whole lot of coverage, and therefore they're really just not going to correct a whole lot. You'd be better off going with something, like I said, like a CC cream, or even creating your own color correcting concealer, which I show you how to do in my color theory for concealer video, so check that out. As far as coverage goes, this is where you're not necessarily going to talk about complementary colors, but you're definitely going to need to take into consideration the color temperature of your particular skin tone. So for example, my skin tone is very cool toned. It took me years and years to figure that out, and to figure out why foundations never matched me and why they always looked funny and orange and weird on me. That's why. It's pretty hard to find cool toned foundations, especially lighter. Darker, it's a lot easier to find cool tone foundations. The only real way I can tell you to get familiar with cool and warm tones is to literally go to Sephora. This is what I used to do when I worked there. And just go and pump a bunch of foundations on your hand and think like, okay, that one looks a little more pink than that one looks a little more yellow than that one, and you will start to be able to gauge a cool tone versus a warm tone. One area in which color theory can get a little muddied and a little confusing when it comes to foundation is the fact that red in general color theory is typically considered a warm color, but when you're talking about makeup, you kind of want to forget that. You want to think of red as an indicator of cool. So people who have a lot of pink in their skin, they have a cool skin tone. And red and pink, you have to kind of think of them as being very similar and treating them kind of the same. Also, if you have a foundation that has a lot of pink in it, likewise, that's going to be a cool toned foundation. So forget that that's technically a warm color. Red or pink in the skin usually indicates a cool toned skin. Along those same lines, if you have a lot of yellow undertone in your skin, you likely have a warm skin tone. Same with olive and green and those kind of colors usually indicate a warm skin tone. Now, it is possible to have a neutral skin tone, which means you're not necessarily super warm and you're not necessarily super cool toned. Generally, those people have a little bit of flexibility where they could lean a little bit warm and kind of fudge it a little bit, blend it really well, and they'll be totally fine. They could lean a little bit cool in a pinch if they needed to. Sometimes it's hard to come to the discovery that you have a neutral skin tone. If you're finding that neither warm nor cool really looks good on your skin, that may be the case. And in that case, you do want to find a really good neutral foundation to match your skin. Sephora does have their Color IQ matching system where they take little pictures with their little device of your skin and it reads your skin tone. That can be really helpful for a lot of people. Some people it's not. But it's one thing to try just to kind of get an idea maybe of which direction to lean in. Now, I know exactly how hard it can be sometimes to find your perfect match in a foundation, especially if you don't totally understand the color temperature of your own skin tone yet. And if you find yourself in that position, it's best to just pick a brand that has a really wide range of shades to choose from. And like I said, just kind of play with them and see which one looks right. Test them right here on your jawbone and see which one blends with your neck really well, and kind of familiarize yourself with what the different shades look like. Generally, if you go to Sephora, there are some brands that tend to focus more on warm tones. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's just the way it is. I found this out the hard way. And same with cool tones and more like neutral tones, or they'll just tend to have a range. So for example, Bobbi Brown and Laura Mercier tend to really focus on warm tones. I have had a really hard time finding anything that fits me and my skin tone in those two brands, but a lot of people with warm tone skin can very easily, so that's one thing to keep in mind. On the very, very cool side, Hourglass makes a bunch of different foundation formulas that are really, really good for different skin types, but they tend to lean toward the cool side. And some brands that generally have a good selection of cool, warm, and neutral tones are things like NARS, Moofy, YSL I think does, and even, let's see, I want to say Urban Decay. Not in their BB cream though, but in their foundation. Now, I'm mentioning all of these high-end brands because you probably know that that's what I'm most familiar with. I've worked with those brands for years and years, and that's just where I feel comfortable and most knowledgeable. Plus, it's very hard to find my shade of foundation at the drugstore. If you are super pale like me and super cool toned like me, it's almost not gonna happen. If you've had a lot of frustration at the drugstore and you think that you might have skin tone kind of like mine, you might consider just splurging for a really nice foundation that comes in your color, because a $6 foundation is gonna be a waste of money if it looks like caca on your face. Now, I know there are some skin tones out there that are not necessarily accounted for in most makeup lines, and I know that can be super frustrating to find your foundation shade. I've had clients had to take the very lightest foundation that we sold at Sephora when I worked there, and buy the Illamasqua, they had a foundation that was pure white. They don't sell it at Sephora anymore, but I think you can still get it, and mix that in with their foundation because they were just so pale that they couldn't find any foundation that matched. I also had a client who was Norwegian, and a lot of kind of Scandinavian people who have really fair skin are very cool toned, and she was trying to find a foundation shade. We went through every single brand that Sephora carried. There was not one that was light enough and pink enough for her. So we were at this for quite a long time, and we eventually had to take the cream blushes that they were like a liquid, like a foundation consistency in a pump that Makeup Forever used to use, and then the lightest foundation from like Bobbi Brown or something like that, and mix the two together because she needed that pink from the cream blush to be added to her foundation. And I showed her that, and it just kind of like blew her mind, because you don't always think to use makeup products for things they're not really made for, but sometimes you absolutely have to and absolutely should. So that's just a couple little suggestions that are very weird but very effective. I hope that I've helped you to kind of understand how foundation and skin tones work a little bit. Like I've said before, color theory goes so much more in depth about the relationship between the different colors and how they interact together, but I really wanted to simplify it and just give you what you needed for this application. So I hope you guys found this video helpful, and stay tuned for some more in this series in the future. Please feel free to leave any questions or requests down below in the comments, and I will see you guys very soon.